I survived 100 days of 1-block skyblock in hardcore Minecraft, a game mode that begins with a single grass block floating in the void. But this isn't just any old grass block. It speaks to me. And when I break it, it regenerates. Again, and again, and again. The block has 10 different phases, each having a different theme, rewards, and challenges. What? My goals are to finish all 10 phases, defeat the Ender Dragon, and turn this single block into a base that's full of life. Also, I've never played 1-block before, and this is hardcore. So, this ought to be interesting. Starting off day 0, I did the only thing that I could do and continued breaking the 1-block. My first chest had some apples and a sapling in it. Nothing too fancy, but the sapling was my ticket to infinite wood, making it invaluable. But not fancy. The 1-block starts out with a tutorial that explains how everything works. Most of this stuff I already mentioned in the intro, so I'm one step ahead of the game. I got a second chest that was identical to the first. So like driving a new car off the lot, my original sapling had immediately lost half its value. As the 1-block demonstrates, gravel is still affected by gravity, so it gave me a water bucket I could use to place a block under the 1-block, making this 2-block. And I figured while I was at it, I'd give myself somewhere else to stand. With those upgrades, the tutorial came to an end, signified by that wandering trader sound and this benevolent gift, a word I haven't seen since my 8th grade vocabulary test. There's a short upgrade timer between phases that gets progressively longer the more you progress, and then a message that welcomes you to the next phase. I've been promised a lifetime of flowers, and I'm holding them to it. Now that the tutorial was done, it was time to actually get to work. I used the planks I had to make slabs and ladders so that I could begin expanding further down, and thus began construction of the pit. The pit, an idea I am shamelessly borrowing from Kolanii, is a highly advanced defense mechanism that consists of a hole. Or a pit, if you will. According to little to no research, when constructed properly, this thing is enough to carry you through all 10 phases. The only problem was, I didn't have enough blocks to construct it yet, and the 1-block didn't seem too interested in giving me more oak logs to finish it. But it did give me a pig, who seemed just as confused as why he's here as I am. The rest of the night I continued breaking the 1-block and slowly building out the pit, getting a chicken, a cow, and a sheep to spawn in the process. As the sun rose on day 1, my first tree grew. And I'd just like to mention that if you're curious about any of the packs or the mods I'm using, like the shaders or player animations, there's a Google Doc in the description where you can find links to everything. Being able to grow my own trees meant that I would be able to expand my base faster, and I now had enough planks to fill in the rest of the pit. You, sir, need to move. That's a good idea. With the animals protesting the pit, I planted a third sapling and continued progressing through the 1-block. The nice thing about this challenge is that anytime I'm stuck or unsure what to do next, I can always just break the block and it feels like I'm accomplishing something. Sounds like the origin of an addiction. The chest gave me a carrot, which really excited the cow, and the pig must have smelled it because he finally got out of my way. And it was time to begin the main platform. Nope, don't do that. Okay. To understand why I'm building that down here, you must first understand the point of the pit. Eventually, the 1-block is going to start spawning things that want to kill me. So, the pit traps everything that spawns on the 1-block. But that also includes innocent passive mobs that I want to keep. My ingenious solution was to just build everything below it so that I could drop the passive mobs out of the bottom. With the arrival of the second night, which occurred at the end of day 1, I was beginning to worry about phantoms. I had no way of getting a bed to stop them from spawning, and fighting them off with my bare hands while bare would be a death sentence. I figured the best course of action would be to hit the 1-block again, so that's what I did. All night. And eventually the 1-block was satisfied, rewarding me with a grass block and upgrading to phase 2, the underground. This phase promised monsters, and although the 1-block had already lied about the lifetime supply of flowers, by giving me not a single flower, I was inclined to believe it. I spent the rest of the night formulating a plan. So, no, because I don't know. So with that decided, I started working on the expansion of the main platform. In order for the pit to function properly, I needed to get all of the passive mobs and the trees out of the way. If I could make room for them on the platform below, I'd be able to finish the pit and continue progressing. Around the edge of the platform, I began placing dirt, From there, I could expand outward and give myself more room to plant trees. I made sure to place slabs under the dirt so that I wouldn't lose any if I decided to tear this down later. And with that, I felt confident enough mining the stone I needed for a stone axe to speed up the process. It may not seem like much, but I'd been breaking every block with my fist for almost an hour now. The next upgrade was a fence around the pit, both to keep me from falling in and to keep the bad stuff from getting out. I came up a few fences short though, and I didn't have many planks left, but the slabs from the ledge I just destroyed were recycled for a new border around the edge. This one is better because it's lower down, allowing me to cower behind the fence at the slightest hint of danger. I liked it so much, I made it a row wider, which had nothing to do with my fear of getting knocked off and dying to fall damage. One of the many things that made me vulnerable now were spiders, but I had to be willing to risk it if I wanted to do more than just wait for trees to grow. I upgraded my pickaxe to stone, was reminded that gravity exists, sometimes, and continued mining the one block until something revolutionary happened. Mushroom Cow. My food source for the next 40 days. Because of her, no plants or animals will have to die to keep me fed. So that's one less way they'll die. I then began working on a more permanent solution for getting animals out of the pit, by throwing some trapdoors down. I thought I'd test it on myself first, just to be sure. Get down there. It's safer for you. With the animals out of the pit, I could now start to make some real progress with the one block. The addiction grows stronger. It wasn't long before I got my first taste of danger. A zombie with a nice hat. The pit did pit things, and the axe did axe things. On day 3, the block gave me my first iron. Just 2 ore for now. And then I was forced to face the most challenging part of one block skyblock. Inventory management. A problem that only becomes more and more of a problem as the one block evolves. My solution? Use the one block's own chests against it by creating a chest monster I can dump everything into. For those of you I've just offended, don't worry, it eventually becomes an organized chest monster. I got some soup from the soup cow, and how many times am I going to say it in this video, continued mining the one block. Spiders. Like most bad guys, they prefer not to attack you in broad daylight. Lucky for me, I don't honor that code. With it being day 3, the pressure was on to find a way to deal with phantoms. So I smelted up my iron for a set of shears, and got enough wool to make a bed. So now the biggest threat to my existence is the very thing sustaining it. That and my own ineptitudes. Ooh, big word. The rest of day 3 was focused on the one block. I got some spruce saplings, which would normally be my go-to wood type, but having already built everything out of oak, the spruce was going to have to take the back seat in this playthrough. As great as rabbits are, they're not really suited for this world. I wasn't going to actively dispatch them, but their bones are made of glass, so it was only a matter of time. For the second mushroom cow, I had to rethink my trapdoor design. Now they're in pairs, so I'll have more space to drop things down. Then it was time to explain a concept that I feel like I've explained a million times in my videos. It'll be quick. Phantoms spawn after 3 nights of not sleeping. Laying in a bed counts as sleeping, as shown by the advancement and statistics page. So laying in a bed and getting up resets the phantom cooldown without skipping the night, giving me more time to do stuff like this. I'm not going to be showing every single block I break moving forward, because it takes over 6,000 blocks to finish all 10 phases, but I'll make sure to show you the most important developments, like my first iron pickaxe and shield. I'm still going to be relying on stone picks for a bit, because I'd like to save up for iron armor, but this shield should keep me alive for now. This creeper had no counter for my peekaboo tactics, and the shield may have saved my life here, so good call. With the sun rising on day 4, I used some of the wood and the dirt I'd gathered to build some more spots for trees to grow. The main thing holding me back from expansion at this point was a lack of wood, and a lack of room to grow more of it. Am I ever going to finish this fence? Yeah. Getting my third soup cow gave me the chance to test out the new trapdoor layout. Still kind of scuffed. I felt like I had to be getting close to phase 3 now, so I decided to push for that. There will come a time where the one block isn't my #1 priority. Sad times. But right now, it's really the only way to progress. The final chest of phase 2 gives you a map, so here's the grand reveal. It's like 99% gray, but I like the design that we've got there. With the upgrade bomb ticking, I took the opportunity to clean out my inventory. Phase 3 is the icy tundra, so pretty self-explanatory. Snow, strays, and can we just take a second to appreciate the shield, ladies and gentlemen? When it works, I take the credit, and when it doesn't, I blame the game. Getting a bone from the stray meant that I could make an unlimited water source now. I used the same trick in my regular skyblock video, but basically tall seagrass turns flowing water into source blocks. So I made a place to keep my water, cleaned up, chopped down, and threw down the rest of that fence. The first friendly mob of Phase 3 ended up being a wolf. The word friendly is questionable. I'd like to say that there's a happy ending for the rabbits in this story, but I'm not sure how being avenged is classified. The survivor is the snow fox, who narrating me is calling Asteroid. Oh, he's gonna... Well, there go the chickens. Get it? Because dinosaurs. If I was going to lose any of the animals to an extinction event, the chickens were the best, because I can just use eggs to revive them. The one block gave me a goat to make up for it, but then the trees claimed their first victim. Cow murdering trees. I bet you weren't expecting that when you clicked on the video. Unfortunately, cows don't lay eggs, so that was my breeding pair gone. The other tree claimed my third mushroom too, so this was a problem that was going to need to be addressed. The first step of that was making more space. It was at this point I noticed that I was now missing a sheep. Turns out Asteroid still had it out for one more victim. At the time, I thought maybe the goat knocked it off, and I wasn't taking any chances getting pushed into the void myself. Why I continued planting trees after witnessing the first 2 deaths, the world may never know. How did you... Oh, you can just jump out. So in the span of 13 minutes, I'd lost almost half the animals on my island. I finally got the hint that the trees might not be a good idea, and for the safety of the survivors, a border of bottom slabs were installed around the edge. Mobs don't pathfind to bottom slabs, so they shouldn't fall off the edge anymore. Now that the accidental death chance was down to 0, I needed to find a way to grow trees safely. I finally placed that grass block I got from the Phase 1 chest. Not really relevant to the problem at hand, but still important. The only solution I could think of was to plant them on dirt pillars. Ugly, yes, but it was either that or cram all the animals into a tiny pen, and I figured they'd experienced enough trauma for one day. The animals were safe, more trees were growing than before, and I could continue what I was put here to do. Great. I spent the night focusing on 2 main goals. The first, of course, mining the 1 block. This came with the side quests of not dying. Yes. I got an iron helmet. And taming my first dog. Goal 2 became necessary when I realized what Goal 1 had done to my inventory. I needed to organize, so here's all 5 minutes in 5 seconds. And then the result. Chopping down a few trees meant that I could finish the safety border, which was good because I almost sprinted off the edge. That's okay. All that 1 block breaking gave me enough dirt to finish filling in the platform, including the area with the goat pen after some interesting methods. Chopping the pillar trees wasn't really as annoying as I thought it would be. Still ugly, but I'd worry about that once I had more space to work with. The next mob the block gave me was complicated. If I let the polar bear out as is, he would kill Asteroid. Not that Asteroid didn't deserve that fate, I just preferred to keep him alive. The only way to do that was to trap him in a pen. Unfortunately, foxes don't follow you even if you're holding sweet berries, and they just run away unless you're crouching. Feeding them a berry does make them a little less skittish, but I only had 1, so crouch pushing was my chosen method. He's not moving. I'm sure that will change. He's probably just going to sprint across the map any second now. The ambush method worked a bit better, so I built the pen around him and gave it a nice roof for safety. Once I was better established, I'd be able to focus on more humane methods of zookeeping. But keep in mind that this run is currently being fueled by a shield and the milk of a fungally infected cow. Oh, one block, give us strength in these questionable times. And maybe bread. What was that? Hearing that sound for the first time spooked me a bit, but as far as I can tell, that's its only purpose. It plays randomly as you progress, so eventually it will just become background noise for me. I got a second pair of snow foxes to start day 8. Getting them into the pen wasn't going so well, so I resorted to chasing them with a glowberry. And all I can say is that sometimes things just work out. Trying to replicate that success usually doesn't though, so for the second one, I decided to just let him roam. There's a pig in there, why? So that's where he'll be staying for the next 100 days. I wish I was joking. But I know the plot. Just like I know I spent the rest of day 8 worshipping the one block. It was mostly just mining, but it did feel fitting to sacrifice a goat. Then I sacrificed a bone to my new dog. Chopping down all the trees gave me a half stack of logs, which I think is the most I've ever had at once. The third set of snow foxes was allowed to roam free. As long as I had a pair safe, what happened to the rest after that was up to fate. This is the closest I'd come to dying so far. Moral of the story, the shield works a lot better when you use it. These guys do enough damage to kill me in 3 shots, so there's not much room for error. After about 4 days of on and off mining, I completed phase 3. There was nothing too crazy in the chest. The ice is meant to give you your infinite water source, but I know the forbidden techniques, so it wasn't necessary. I was starting to stockpile a decent amount of iron. Not enough for a full set of iron yet, but hopefully by the end of phase 4. Speaking of, we have the ocean phase. Having completed 3 phases in just 9 days, I was starting to question how long the phases were actually going to take. I didn't want to blow through them all in 20 days, so I started prioritizing other stuff, like adding another row of blocks to the entire island. What I didn't know is that it takes exponentially more and more blocks for every phase, so I'm not sure 20 days is even possible. Ooh, sand. It's the little things. In these early phases, there really wasn't much to do outside of breaking the one block. My idea for this island was to cover the entire thing in grass, and the only way to get dirt was the one block for now. The puddle is there in case any water mobs spawn. I'm no betting man, but it took a while to get the first living thing, unless you count the coral. It didn't make it. Turtles are much cooler anyways. One of them may have suffered a minor concussion, but he'll be fine. And then I came face to face with a mob I was not capable of defeating face to face, so I backed away slowly. For reference, these guys do enough damage to 2-shot someone with an iron helmet. Luckily, the pit turned it into more of a face-to-feet battle, in which I had the advantage. It was still a bit awkward, so I replaced the bottom row with some slabs and continued my worship. And on the morning of day 10, I got my first diamond. 1 diamond is never enough, so I continued mining. Until things got fishy. It's a good thing I added those slabs. We wouldn't want this to look awkward or anything. Now that I'd gotten my first taste of the rich life, I needed to see what else the block had to offer. Then I remembered bundles were a thing, and I couldn't just leave it with the default skin. Well, now that just looks like Santa. Santa or not, this bundle meant that I'd be able to mine the one block for much longer before unloading my inventory. I'll just let this clip speak for itself. Should have been a fish lifeguard. I finally had enough dirt to finish the expansion I started earlier. But this raised the question of how long I could, or should, keep up this one row at a time expanding thing. The bottleneck at the moment was dirt, since my only source was the one block. This would change once I got access to the nether, but for now I decided that it made more sense to build the main island out of planks first, so that I could take advantage of the extra space now. Then I'd worry about filling in the dirt later. It was time to start stockpiling a lot of wood. When I ran out of trees, I summoned the courage for another fish rescue. The turtle really seemed to like the fish. That, or he was just hungry. Not as hungry as the snow fox, apparently.
The free-range snow foxes decided to start migration early this year.
I got some replacement fish a minute or so later, and was forced to expand the pond again thanks to the turtle now taking up half of it. The one block knew exactly what it was doing when it gave me a glow squid. Knowing there was nowhere I'd be able to put it since they'd beached themselves in my fish puddle, I was going to need a deeper one. Turns out the glow squid would never get to see it, because no amount of baby proofing can protect a Minecraft mob. But it would be perfect for anything else Phase 4 threw at me. Like axolotls, who would murder the entire fish pond without blinking. Mostly because of their lack of eyelids, but they're not to be played with. They also kill squids, so those are off the table now because I'm not making another water hole. This pufferfish was cool, but I wasn't sure if it would poison other mobs, so I kept it in the bucket, made a replacement, and realized I'd accumulated enough iron to make that full set of armor. A huge step toward making myself less of a glass cannon. I don't know what kind of fumes these coral blocks were releasing, but for a second here I actually thought this dolphin was flying. Unfortunately, the way dolphins work, keeping them as pets really isn't possible. Their AI stops working when a player isn't around, and they die. So for that reason, I'm out. They can live the rest of their lives inside the pit. How long that ends up being is up to them. Having the water there made guardians much easier to deal with. Then I got something that was really cool. Frogs. If I'd been training for anything, it was this moment. I ended up catching all 4 tadpoles. A full night of one block breaking and animal rescue meant that the trees were ready for chopping. And with my 2 stacks of logs exactly, I was ready to begin the first major upgrade to the main platform. I'll leave a link in the description to the website I used to build my circles, but it's basically just a lot of counting. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this will be the middle, and it does look like that lines up, so I can count. Yay! Look at that. I did it. I decided to fill it in 1 quadrant at a time. Since I only had enough slabs for 1, the first would be for growing more trees. I tried to come up with a better method for keeping mobs off the saplings to avoid those ugly pillars. This was the prototype, and I spent the rest of the day building my patent-pending tree holders. After using these for my entire run, I can confidently say that I have no idea how effective they are at stopping mobs from walking on them. I mean, the frogs just seem to do whatever they want. All I'm saying is, if you decide to use these, I am not responsible for any missing pets. And that marks the end of the dirt pillar chapter. They won't be missed. Having this many saplings meant I hardly had to wait before chopping them, which allowed me to finish filling in the second quadrant by the next morning. Another chop for the third quadrant, and in just 40 minutes, the entire main platform was complete. Well, the foundation at least. Look at all this space. Next was a bigger area for fish. This would keep them a little safer if another eyelidless predator showed up. I was genuinely impressed one of the dolphins managed to survive this long. We might have to contact Guinness soon. To start off day 15, Mrs. Puff got a Mr. Puff, and then things got a little less friendly. By that I mean the block clearly wanted to kill me. Or my frogs. Neither of which were an acceptable answer. I did get a trident, but I'm not sure if that's much better than a shovel for eating soup. The Santa bundle was definitely the right call. The amount of procrastinating I could do before visiting the chest monster was satisfying. Phase 4 really didn't have much else to offer besides what you've already seen. I did get some regular squids, but it was either them or axolotls, so in the pit they stay. I witnessed a turtle become 2 turtles. Really makes you wonder. And just like that, Phase 4 was complete. I got a complimentary trident, some fish, and that satisfying countdown. I've gotta say, emptying the bundle? Not as fun as filling it. And the next phase is... Jungle Dungeon. Couldn't have said it better myself. The word dungeon wasn't exactly reassuring, but it was time to figure out what that meant. It took a while for the first scary dungeon mob to spawn. If I was a rabbit, I'm sure I'd be terrified right now. Jokes aside, ocelots are one of the mobs that like to disappear when they aren't name tagged, so I wasn't sure if these guys would end up sticking around. Chances of survivability increased to an unknown % when I got a second pair of them. And this time I already knew the drill. I figured putting them in boats might help keep them from disappearing. This is up there as one of the weirdest things I had to do in this challenge. And it didn't even work. It's way easier to scare them into the boat than chase them with it. I then noticed that the farm animals were somehow pathfinding to the tree holders. Not cool, but a problem I would save for later. I wanted to make a basic garden around the fish pond so that I could start growing carrots and wheat. I'd lost my breeding pair of pretty much every farm animal so far, and I didn't want mushrooms to join that list. Back at the 1 block, it was still giving me tridents, so I finally took the hint and equipped this one. And then I got to experience Phase 5's hostile mobs for the first time. Witches are no match for the pit, and dolphins are no match for witches. Picking up the frog lights I mined gave me the loudest advancement of the journey so far. And then parrots. Not the easiest mob to wrangle, and in case you were wondering, punching them doesn't help. Oh, you'll never guess the next mob. Unless you're familiar with 1 block, I guess. It's a rare jungle horse. The pit wasn't exactly equipped with the means to release these guys, so things got messy. After a few more breaks, I finally got some sugarcane. Pretty useless for now, but it would be essential once I got an elytra. My shield clearly still had a hole in it, and now so did my helmet. Nothing a little soup can't fix. With the amount of iron I was bringing in, I figured I'd be fine using iron tools from now on. The next chest had one of the most important items of the run. A lead. Moving around all these passive mobs just got a lot easier, and I could even try to keep the squid now. Try. Day 17 began with the not so fun news that the 1 block could now spawn Vexes. Oh no. Little flying creatures that can phase through walls and deal over 3 times the damage of a zombie. Perfectly balanced. But these ones don't come with the iron swords they usually do, so they were quite manageable. The second one seemed to be lacking in brain cells. It's okay, me too. I'm going to chop these trees down, and I'm not going to replace them until I've built a wood. What I meant to say was build a pen, because letting the animals sit on tree holders was just asking to lose them. Eventually, I'd be able to let them all roam free, but for now there wasn't a safe way to let that happen. Thanks to the lead, I was able to move all the at-risk mobs by sunrise. It's no secret that the best start to any great day begins with a little deforestation. It was going to be a great day. I realized that the polar bear could be moved into the main pen to save space, and then began smelting some more stone so I could eventually upgrade the pit to a more durable block, before getting a reminder that it didn't really matter what the pit looked like if I was dead. A dumb mistake trying to block potions with a shield, but not nearly as much of an issue as leaving the gate to the pit wide open. With the poison, I couldn't regain enough health to fight back. I was 1 harming potion away from death. Hiding behind the animal pen, I was able to break aggro and make it to my soup cow, where I killed off the other witch, healed up, and when I went back for the trident I threw, it was gone. Oh, that disappeared already? That was only on the ground for like a minute. Having since learned that thrown tridents despawn in 60 seconds, I'd just like to humbly suggest that super rare weapons don't decay 5 times faster than a dropped piece of dirt. I really need to make a rant video. I was going to craft a bow, but the witch was getting a little too close, and I realized I could just trap her in a boat. A simple solution that made her pretty much helpless. In the end, a close call. And it's a good thing these phantoms didn't show up when I was on half a heart. Now seemed like as good a time as ever to give the pit its makeover. I decided to turn it into a tower that somehow took me 2 days to build, partly because keeping the functionality was complicated, but also because I couldn't make up my mind. I still wasn't sold after 45 minutes. It was kind of stubby looking, but I decided I'd just come back and upgrade it later on. It took so long that the crops were now fully grown. But the real question is, can I keep calling it a pit? Or is it a tower? Technically, the pit still exists inside the tower. The tower's like a shell. I don't know. I also didn't know what this sound meant. Turns out, I had just gotten my first odd chest. These hold a handful of weird items completely unrelated to the current phase. Even spawn eggs, which felt kind of illegal to have. White frogs can only be raised in warm biomes, so these were irreplaceable. The boat would protect them well. Irreplaceable. What's better than having 2 frog types? Having more frog types is the only correct answer to that question. The one block agrees, and you can't argue with something that hands out free pandas. You can't lead them though, so I had to do this the old-fashioned way. I haven't gotten a hostile mob in a while. He's not doing a very good job of attacking me. He just goes through the floor, man. The next chest gave me vines, which I thought would be a cool way to get onto the top of the tower, and also much safer than climbing through the middle of the pit itself. My next gift was more parrots, and now that I had a farm going, I could actually tame these ones. 28 seeds later. Seems like enough food to get them through day 100, I think. Then more horses that I was not breaking the tower down to release, so I had to come up with a new method. For the first time, it did seem like the phase was dragging on. It was really just more of what I'd already seen, so I took a break to build a sugarcane farm, and then refused to stop mining until I had completed phase 5. Yeah. The last chest was really good, giving me my first jungle saplings and bamboo, which I was worried about not getting. The upgrade was going to take 60 seconds, which gave me the time to empty my inventory. There's so much garbage in here. Phase 6 was the red desert phase, promising heat, dust, and death. Lovely stuff. Exploring the heat, dust, and death, I was expecting llamas, camels, and husks. Not suspicious sand though. It was about as useful as the llamas that came after it. Knowing that wasn't going to stop my completionist brain from wanting to keep them, of course. So far, I was 2 for 2 on my predictions. Not really surprising since there's like 4 desert mobs in the game, but we don't have to talk about that. Getting copper meant I could now make a brush for that suspicious sand. Here we go. The chances of this giving me anything useful was essentially 0, but just like the llamas, I was on a mission to hoard as much stuff as I possibly could, and that included pottery sherds. To be fair, there was a chance to get emeralds, which could be helpful later on. There was just nothing in the loot table that was going to help me now. You ever just have those moments where nothing you do seems to work? You fall down, you eat some soup, you try to get back up, and then you just fall again. Me neither. The other hostile mob for phase 6 was the pillager. The tower pit made short work of them. I found a heart of the sea, and while I may be on an island, this sailor don't be seeing much sea these days. Then the most revolutionary addition to the island since wood. His name is Lewis. Is it Lewis or Luis? Whichever you prefer, Luis was going to change everything. If he survived the thunderstorm, that is. Okay. Nope. If a villager is struck by lightning, it turns into a witch, and I couldn't take any chances losing one. Release the Luis. I was going to build a small house for him, but then I realized it wasn't going to do anything to stop the lightning. And a house this size also left no room to breed more villagers once I got a second. So instead, I built another pen identical to the animal pen. It would offer the most space and be easy to take down once I decided to build something more permanent. For the lightning problem, I wanted to add a lightning rod above the 1 block, but I noticed that it destroys the placed blocks around it when it spawns a mob, so the sand is there to test how large that area is. Oh, no. Thankfully, the test dummy was a donkey and not a villager, but the floating planks meant that any block I placed above that should be fine. I went up a total of 39 blocks before placing the lightning rod. but I could have placed it a lot higher since the area these things cover is huge. Boats protect you from fall damage, torches are the bane of sand's existence, and the lightning rod will be hardly noticeable from down here. This phase also spawns Vindicators, who weren't too sure if they wanted to hurt me at first. They did. The feeling was mutual. Then a flock of husks. And my final prediction, a camel. I know what a desert is. Apparently they can walk over fences, so keeping it in the animal pen wasn't an option. But he didn't seem like the SKP type. I turned the pottery sherds I had into a pot to save space. And now that I've said sherd twice, some of you are probably opening up the comment section to tell me it's pronounced shard.
This is not correct. The correct term to use is sherd.
The next new mob was the armadillo. Other than providing armor to my dogs, who would never see battle, and maybe it's good looks, it didn't bring much to the table. So I continued breaking the one block, determined to get that second villager. A fox was also nice, since now I had both variants. The level of disrespect in this guy's stare. And the audacity to break my helmet. He had it coming. For the crops, I was finally able to weed out the wheat and replace it with carrots. Carrots are much more efficient than bread for breeding villagers, so Luis approved. Day 27. Would it be the day Luis would find a partner? I don't know. But I wasn't going to stop until I got one. For Luis, I mean. Villagers aren't my type. Oh, okay. Her name? Wanda. Her game? Masonry. Her fame? Raising a small army of traders to skyrocket the economy. Fingers crossed. Right now, the limiting factor was the fact that I had one bed and, even worse, one sheep. Building it a small pen with access to grass was a start. We don't need 2 sheep. We got this dude, Larry. We've got Larry. I used the pitcher plant from the odd chest to dye my bed cyan since you can't plant more without the seeds. I started with some slabs to mark where all the beds would go, and for now placed the 2 that I had. The 2 turned into 3, and now carrots were going to be the main problem. So I scaled up the farm with all the dirt I had left, planted the carrots, and decided that this cause was worth converting my gravel into dirt. For those that don't know, combining gravel with dirt turns it into coarse dirt, which can be turned into normal dirt by right-clicking with a hoe or a shovel. Repeating that over and over, I turned all the gravel into dirt, which allowed me to expand the farm even more. While the carrots grew, I took some time to experiment with something for Larry. I thought I might be able to make a wool farm. Even though I didn't have the quartz for an observer, building any repeating clock would work. In theory. Under the grass block, I made a platform for the hopper minecart that would collect the drops. Long story short, I was able to get a functioning farm. But the dispenser clicking non-stop just wasn't going to work for me, because it would ruin the audio for the rest of the video. So for now, I scrapped the idea. A waste of 20 minutes? No. I was wiser. I decided I didn't want to use stick trades for emeralds. While it is very efficient, it's equally as boring, and I've done it too many times. So I was going to experiment with other methods, like carrots. The beds were coming along way faster than the carrots, and I took some time that evening to figure out what the next big goal was. At some point I needed to build an iron farm and a mob farm, but getting access to the nether first would allow more possibilities through observers and lava. So I decided to wait. I wasn't sure when I would be given the obsidian to go to the nether, or what it would even look like in one block, but there was only one way to find out. I'm not sure if this is my first time getting cactus, but it's my first time showing it, so... I got cactus, and donkeys, and a vindicator. There comes a point in a man's life where he doesn't need another donkey. Let it be known I am 3 donkeys beyond that point. Why? I will gladly accept another camel though. It is known. Just a few blocks later, another odd chest, and can we just take a second to appreciate whatever this was? I got a potato. I've never been so excited about a potato before. And then, to my surprise, oh, I got a 3rd villager. Her name was Doris, and I wanted no part in the conversation that would stir up. Nice. With the next carrot harvest, I now had enough to give some to the villagers. The night brought husks, a second armadillo, and my favorite, phantoms. It's hard to keep track of sleeping when you're not really doing it, and clearly I'd waited too long. Laying in a bed would stop more from spawning, I think, and the rest I fought off. I had enough beds now to reclaim my own, which would hopefully remind me to use it more. Day 31 brought a pair of regular foxes, so I put 2 in the ark for safety. And taking nearly 3 hours total, phase 6 was complete. The chest had a bunch of stuff in it, and as usual, the upgrade timer gave me the chance to clean up my inventory. Phase 7 turned out to be exactly what I was hoping for, the nether phase. I made a diamond pickaxe, assuming it was going to give me the obsidian at some point to make my own portal. The carrot yield was good this year, and I was able to give more to the villagers, so hopefully tomorrow would bring children. Now, even though this was my first time playing one block myself, I had skimmed through a video on it to get a basic idea of what to expect. In that skimming, I heard a rumor that the nether phase spawns ghasts. To that, I say no thank you. So I equipped the tower with this makeshift, weird, wooden thing floating above. The MW squared TFA for short. Will this work? I don't know. Will it burn down? Probably. Its purpose is to catch ghasts so they don't destroy everything I've built so far. Nothing too important. Before I got too far, I made a new shield to replace the one the phantoms broke. And then I was ready. As I'd guessed, the one block started giving me obsidian, so I'd have my nether portal in approximately 10 years. I was getting the occasional quartz ore, so I would be able to make a few observers now. Also, each phase has a chance to spawn blocks from earlier phases, so that's what those were. Thankfully, magma cubes spawn in baby form, so they're pretty much harmless. Piglins. No match for the tower pit. In my third odd chest, I found a dolphin spawn egg. I'm not sure if the one block was shaming me or giving me a chance to redeem myself. I'd like to remind you that phase 7 promised chaos. The blaze weren't that bad. Kind of loud, but not for long. The only thing worse than breaking obsidian is breaking crying obsidian. The name is fitting. Ancient debris. Not that useful yet, but it was pretty weird seeing it considering I'm still wearing iron. It's almost as equally as weird as seeing a hoglin on ice. The first chest worth noting had blaze powder and a ghast tier. Just when you thought the shivering was over, it's back with a vengeance. Or a death wish. I had to confine him to a wooden shack for the time being, but that was his own fault. Another carrot harvest meant that it was time for the villagers' nightly feeding. Gonna give Lewis... Never mind, the baby robbed him. And the moment we've all been waiting for. Nope. The MW squared TFA actually worked. The next chest ended up being pretty useful. The nether warts in there meant I'd no longer need to find a fortress if I wanted to brew potions. The obsidian was slowly adding up, putting me at 5 after those two. And there wasn't much else for me to do other than grind for the full 10. Just like the Vexes from before, I guess the piglin brutes were deemed too dangerous to be given weapons on this map. And that was a-okay with me. I got both types of nether vines from a chest, one of which would turn out to be very important. The next mob scared me so much that I spilled my bucket. The Strider didn't seem to care that it almost exploded, but that tracks. After some inventory management, I noticed that an iron golem had spawned. I put him inside the villager pen in case of an emergency, and then went back to tame the cat, and put it under the tower. So now if any phantoms spawned, I'd have a place where I'd be completely safe. That night, I got a chest even more odd than an odd chest. I'm not sure what any of this has to do with the nether, but I'll take it. Even with the ghasts spawning, the blazes were still the biggest threat. There's really nothing stopping them from flying out of the tower, and they could hit me through the gaps pretty easily. The chests continued to make me question everything, but it didn't matter because 2 obsidian later, I had enough to make my nether portal. I put it next to the sugarcane farm for now, and did some last minute chores before going in, like cleaning my inventory, lighting the portal, noticing my fish were gone, No, my fish are gone. And harvesting the carrots. The nether was just a regular nether, albeit not a very good one. I spawned on a small shelf in a soul sand valley with really nowhere to go. But there was at least some lava I could take back with me. Lava meant I could make a cobble generator if I needed to. But for now, I had a bone to pick with a certain farm I tried to build earlier. This time it took me less than 2 minutes. And with Larry stuffed in, manually shearing was a thing of the past, and crafting beds just got a lot easier. I then took a second to figure out what type of iron farm and mob farm I was going to build. If you don't know me by now, I of course just couldn't build regular farms that would be suitable for a skyblock map. What's the fun in building a simple farm that provides me with a reasonable amount of drops when I can spend much longer building something unconventional or completely overkill? The mob farm I've chosen was originally designed by Nembon, and it uses dispensers to wash mobs off the spawning platforms. Dispensers require 3 string each, and I have a whopping 1. My 2 options for getting more string were cats or striders. One of those options gets me hate mail, and the other is killing striders. Bowls of soup weren't going to cut it for another expedition. All it would take is being lit on fire once, and my 4 bowls of soup would be bowls of. So I traded with a farmer for some bread. Technically a worse food source, but when you can fit 60 loaves of bread in the same space as a bowl, you learn not to question things. With my hydraulic pressed bread, I needed a way to get down to ground level, so I mined over to a new shelf. This one had enemies, but was much closer to land. The weeping vines and bone meal I grabbed earlier were my ticket to that land. Strider hunting is complicated for many reasons, the first being just getting to the striders. Once I had a proper way up and down, it became clear that this was going to take a lot of blocks. The first 2 were free, and my strategy was to lead them to a boat where I could safely collect the drops. I needed around 30 string total, but with the 3 closest striders killed, things just got a lot more complicated. The next 25 minutes were a mix of collecting netherrack, bridging to striders, and collecting their string. So here that is. Also trying not to die. Strider hunting was concluded on day 37, and before heading back, I grabbed a stack of soul sand for soul campfires. Those were going to be needed for the killing area. The building block for the mob farm would be none other than oak wood. It was still the only block that I could quickly farm. By the morning, I was out of trees. The air quality was questionable, and I only had 2 of the 10 stacks I needed. Using all my bone meal throughout the next day got me close to 6. And a quick trip into the nether for bone blocks gave me the rest of the bone meal I needed. It wouldn't be a complete run without return to sender. Another night was filled with the sound of chopping. And on day 40, I was ready. The days here are going to be a bit of a blur, because we're dealing with over 2 hours straight of building. I started off with a small circular platform away from the main one. It was close enough that the mob farm would still be in range of the player, also known as me, at all times, but far enough that I wouldn't have to deal with the horrible sounds it would produce. Above the small platform goes a larger one that holds the water funnel thing. Filling it in was kind of complicated because the water needs to drop off of ledges of different heights to make it to the middle. The water is also complicated because turning the entire outer edge of a circle into source blocks turns the whole thing into a stagnant pond. So I had to leave gaps in weird places to make it work. In the middle, I made a glass window. This would provide the optimal viewing angles needed to make sure the mobs were being disposed of properly. On a side note, these modded glass sounds are extremely satisfying. Next up were the spawning platforms. As I mentioned earlier, each layer needs a dispenser for water flushing, but what I forgot was that each dispenser also needs a bucket, so from this point on, I had to sacrifice golems to start saving iron. With the dispensers crafted, it was time to get the most time-consuming part of the build over with. Iron golems didn't seem to spawn when the villagers were sleeping, so I prioritized building at night and iron golem slaying during the day. I didn't finish the platforms until day 46, but after those was the roof that would block the sunlight. It's generally a good idea to save the water buckets for last, because it ensures all of the platforms operate in sync, So before I put those in, I needed to build the clock. This is where I strayed away from the classic Nembon design and went with a modified version by Potato Noir. Instead of wasting resources on repeaters, his version uses a boat clock, so just wood and water. I guess I should also clarify that the killing area is my design, and I don't recommend building it like this. Normally, you kill the mobs quickly by dropping them to their death. I opted for the slower campfire method so I could keep the farm lower to the ground, and have it be the same height as the iron farm I'm going to build. So my design sacrifices efficiency for symmetry. At first, I thought I messed up the boat clock, but it's actually meant to get flooded to make it slower. So we either have a giant mess down there to clean up, or we have a working mob farm. Looks like a working mob farm. In case that wasn't convincing enough, try listening to the sound. In just a minute, I had half a stack of every drop. For now, I literally couldn't afford a collection system, but once the iron farm was finished, it would be free. I removed the waterfall going to the top of the farm, and then it was complete. As I said before, the slow roasting of mobs on a campfire reduces efficiency by quite a lot, but even with that, in the span of a few minutes, I now had more drops than I could carry. So with the overkill mob farm finished, that just leaves the unconventional iron farm. You see, recently on my YouTube homepage, I came across a video showcasing a new iron farm design that I thought was really cool. So cool that it's the only one that I was willing to build. To keep things symmetrical, I was going to be reusing the same water funnel design I built for the mob farm, so I was going to need more wood. I'll spare you the details of the build this time, at least the water bit. The only difference here is the killing area. Instead of campfires, I went with a physics-defying lava sign trap. For now, without the lava, because I didn't want to fall in while building the farm. The reason I've been killing so many golems is because the iron farm requires 24 pistons. It also requires 24 observers, which meant I was finally going to need that cobble generator. I promise this ugly one is just temporary. After losing one too many cobblestone to the lava, I added a slab on top. It helps, but it's not perfect. I also needed more quartz, so back to the nether I went, and some netherrack for temporary blocks. With one more iron golem slain, I was able to craft all the pistons, and cobblestone was again the bottleneck. Just why? Like, that's all I'm gonna say, just why? Once the observers were crafted, I grabbed some extra redstone dust, some mossy cobble as the building block, some string, which is why I built the mob farm first, some spruce in trapdoor form, redstone lamps, and that was everything. I started out by building a water elevator. The villagers have to be about 40 blocks above the water area, so the goal was to convert this into a bubble column at the end and push them in. For now, it was just my way of getting up and down. This iron farm was designed by a channel called Redstone Age. To understand why I thought it was so cool, you'll have to know a little bit about how iron farms work. Just a little. When scared, villagers have a chance to spawn iron golems, but if there's already a golem within 32 blocks of the villager, the spawn attempt fails. So generally, the faster you can remove a new golem from that 32 block area, the faster another can spawn. This is why all the max efficiency iron farms have nether portals. A step below the nether portals, you have iron farms that use water to drop golems off of a platform, like the ones I usually build. And at the bottom, you have starter iron farms that just ignore the mechanic altogether and lie about their rates. But they're still good enough for the majority of players. This design falls somewhere between nether portals and water dropping, and it works by using pistons and trapdoors to instantly drop golems when they spawn. I'll show it in action once it's finished, but before the farm could work, I needed a zombie. A real special one that could pick up items so it wouldn't despawn. Neither of these two qualified. Creepers are not zombies, and that was all that spawned that night. In the morning, I finished the final section of the farm, and then I could demonstrate how it works by placing the string. The golems can only spawn on the trapdoors. They trigger the string, which is detected by the observers, which fires the trapdoor and the piston. So from the moment the golem spawns, it's already falling out of that 32 block range I talked about. Not as efficient as portals, but way better than the water method because you're not moving golems horizontally to the drop. That was plenty of nerding out over the iron farm though, time to make it work. I started by expanding the zombie platform so I could get more spawns that night. The first batch was a dud, as was the second, but the third had a couple of zombies. I was too slow for the first one, but once the skeletons were dealt with, and the spider, I did the test, and useless. But then I noticed the one behind him picked up a bone, and I was quick enough to open the trap. I spawn-proofed the platform with a torch, gave the spider a taste of its own medicine, and finished the zombie chamber. Oh, for now he'd be boxed in to make the villager moving easier. The wood platform was no longer needed. For moving the villagers, I was going to be relying on their own pathfinding. A dangerous idea, but my goal was to get all 6 up here in one night. This night was already over, but that would allow me to prepare during the next day. The gray beds that were up there were only temporary, because I needed a cactus for the better matching green beds. To stop the villagers from drowning on their way up the water elevator, I used kelp to make it a bubble column. Then I nearly threw 19 hours of progress into the trash. Okay. That was about an inch from disaster. With the bubble column finished, I swapped in the superior green beds, and worked on adding a processing area to the bottom of the elevator. This entire plan is riding on the villager sleeping mechanic. Villagers find beds irresistible at nighttime, so I wanted to lure them to the elevator with beds, send them up, and hopefully they'd claim the ones at the top. The fences were a last-minute audible that I thought might keep the villagers lined up better. And Operation Villager Napping was officially a go. Things started off slow at first. I was focusing on moving one at a time and still figuring things out. But I was able to get him into the elevator, and I followed him up to make sure he'd behave. This has to be optimized, otherwise you're just gonna waste time. Okay, well, in hindsight, moving one villager at a time through every bed station is not very efficient. But neither is shoving them into a hole and spending an extra 30 seconds trying to get them out. On top of the inefficiencies, there were also safety concerns. Okay, these little hiccups got ironed out as I went, but they made it come down to the wire. And with the sun peeking over the nothingness, I thought I'd run out of time. But I was able to get the last one in and remove the temporary blocks with 36 seconds to spare. Just like the mob farm, it's nice to have a window at the bottom for viewing. What's the point of burning stuff in lava if you can't see it? Cleaning up the zombie chamber got us our first golem spawn, and now you can finally see it in action. Things got a little sketchy when a golem spawned on the bridge, but he couldn't reach the zombie, so everything was fine. After the elevator was removed, that was it. The 2 biggest builds of the playthrough were complete. It may have taken 23 days, but now I had infinite mob drops and iron. What that meant is now I could really start making some progress through trading. A full harvest of the carrot field yielded about 5 stacks, which might sound like a lot, but replanting costs 80, and once the villagers get their grubby crossed arms on the rest, you're looking at 11 emeralds. So basically, growing carrots naturally wasn't going to cut it. Iron is a much better source of emeralds once you have an iron farm, so I was going to start with that. It does cost some emeralds up front to unlock the iron trade, but I'd saved 22 total so far, some from the 1 block and some from carrot trades. The toolsmith is the cheapest to level up, so Doris it was. 10 worthless shovels later, I had access to iron trades, diamond hoe trades, and enchanted diamond shovels. I threw the stone shovels at the nearest sleeping child, and did the same with the stone hoes from the second toolsmith. Then I ran out of trades. The iron farm had already produced another stack, so I'd be ready for tomorrow's trades. And then for the first time since day 33, I returned to the 1 block. I can't say that it was particularly happy to see me, but you can't really blame it after that long of a break. With day 60 approaching the horizon, I decided that it wasn't worth spending more than 5 days trading. Given the current state of my island, and the fact that I still had 3.5 phases to work through before I could kill the dragon, I still had a lot to do before day 100. My mining session came to a screeching halt when obsidian showed up. So when day 60 arrived, the trading had officially begun. I started by getting a boot trade on my armorer since those are cheaper. Leveled up the nameless toolsmith all the way, unlocking a diamond pick trade, which I kind of needed for the whole obsidian situation. Doris also sold a pick when leveled up, so no diamond axe trade yet. The armorer was next, but he didn't even have an iron trade. Should have put him in the iron farm. Lewis got the last of his trades for the day, and then it was time to put that new pick to work. It was a huge upgrade over iron, and I realized that I now had infinite bows and arrows from the mob farm. The first strider was given a second strider to commiserate with. One might call that a friend. I didn't even get the chance to react to these guys, but their explosions aren't strong enough to do any real damage. So on the story goes. I converted 2 blaze into 2 blaze rods, 2 blaze rods became 2 brewing stands, and those 2 brewing stands would fuel the careers of 2 young clerics. You're a cleric. He's not a cleric. If it wasn't for the mob spawns, it would be hard not to fall into a trance while mining the 1 block. As soon as you start to zone out, it pulls you back in with a set of angry pigs. It's the wow, look how much stuff I'm getting, to the I sure am getting a lot of stuff, to the I would burn everything in my inventory right now if it weren't for the fact that the entire island is made of planks. It's a beautiful push and pull. One of the perks of building a completely overkill mob farm is that I can take all the rotten flesh and sell it for emeralds. 32 emeralds for the small price of my garbage. It made buying 12 pairs of chainmail boots a little less painful, and the 8 chest plates. But that unlocked the first diamond armor trades, and the enchants were actually pretty good. In order to actually afford any of that, I had to max out the iron trades every day. So much running back and forth. I need my donkey. Trading that iron gave me enough emeralds to accidentally buy all of the boots the second armorer had. Thankfully, he was less stingy than his brother and actually accepted iron as payment. His boots and pants were worse though. Buying some questionable looking cakes from Luis, I finally unlocked the holy grail of foods, golden carrots, and then some not so good diamond helmet and chestplate trades from Armorer 2. The cobble generator was upgraded again, this time with a hopper minecart that would, in theory, prevent more of the cobblestone from hurling itself into lava. Still not 100% efficient, but it's going to happen one of these days. The cobble was for my new nano crop farm. I'll leave a link to a tutorial of one of these, but it basically just uses a bunch of bone meal to grow crops quickly. Bone meal that is basically free thanks to my enemies sacrificing themselves 24/7. With some last minute finishing touches and 3 minutes of struggling, the nano farm was nanoing, and I was able to grow more carrots in a minute than I had in the last 62 days combined. Luis was no longer able to handle this level of production on his own, and was quickly running out of places to stuff carrots. I'll try to summarize the trades a bit more from now on, because you don't really need to be notified every time I sell an ingot. The diamond boots were pretty significant, and they unlocked the rest of the set, which again had good enchants. I recruited 2 more farmers to assist Luis with the carrot trades, and the final unemployed villager was given a smithing table to hopefully give me that diamond axe trade I needed. As much fun as it was speedrunning carpal tunnel syndrome trying to plant the carrots, I decided to try setting up an auto clicker to do it for me.
Narrator.
No.
Narrator.
No.
Narrator. Narrator.
Oh.
Narrator. Narrator. Off.
Day 63, I added some reserves to the back of the farm, which led to a whole new embarrassing realization. This isn't even loading. Oh, because it's power. It's fine though, because I finally got the auto clicker running. Be gone, carpal tunnel. Against all odds, carrots had become my best source of emeralds, getting me a stack per day. The new toolsmith turned out to have exactly what I was looking for. Really good enchants too. Even better when combined at an anvil. His shovels were decent too, so I bought one of those to complete my full set of diamond tools. Rotten flesh trades. At night. And then I had the realization that getting a librarian would allow me to buy bookshelves. With those, I could make a full enchanting setup and get way better enchants. I didn't necessarily need the better tools, but the better they were, the faster I'd be able to mine the 1 block, so I figured getting them now could save me time later. And it was even harder to resist after I got a taste of the potential from my new axe. Back to the 1 block to pass some time, and Phase 7 was complete. I had no idea what the next few phases were going to bring. Phase 8 was the idle phase, which apparently means peaceful. I had my guesses. Maybe like Cherry Grove or Trial Chambers if it was a reference to the breeze. Mining through some quartz and ores revealed that at least one of those was correct, but I wasn't sure if I trusted the peaceful part yet. Baby slimes technically can't hurt you, so I'll give them a pass on that one. Next up was a bee. I guess peaceful in its current mood. And for the first time in forever, I was no longer limited to a single lead. I crafted a bookshelf for a lectern, placed it in the villager pen, and remembered that the current unemployment rate was 0%. Unacceptable. A problem that could only be solved by a new generation of villagers. In the meantime, I'd stock up on emeralds. It's a good look for you, I like that. And mine the 1 block, which gave me an axolotl. Just another pink one, unfortunately. I was getting some interesting blocks though, from honey to slime and even beehives. The slime block was particularly useful because I could use it to make oozing potions. A potion that's a better slime farm than a slime farm. Like the wings of phantoms rejected my arrows, I will use these potions to reject the laws of physics, and turned one slime block into 11. I used the beehive the one block gave me to give my bee a home. Whether he'd be smart enough to stay near it was up to the zeros and ones. That was all this phase had to offer so far, besides entertainment. And then mules, which really left me no choice but to remove the MW² TFA. It had served its purpose, but was no longer needed. Just think of it as a retirement. A retirement to my chest monster. Just like that, the promise of peace was broken, and by, of all things, phantoms. Let's play a game. I show you a frame, and you tell me if it's a hit or miss. Decent shot, I think. That's a miss. Can I interest you in an arrow to the face? Miss. A diving target here. Pretty hard to line up that shot, but it looks like I'd miss. I wanted to make sure it wasn't my mods before bringing it up, so I tried in a vanilla 1.19 world where I couldn't recreate it. But as soon as I switched to 1.21.4, a frustrating bug to say the least, but back to the important stuff. The next one block chest gave me honey bottles and a cherry sapling, and then cats, which I kind of had a farm for already with the villagers. The second bee needed no introductions, you knew the drill. But the next bees were different. Though these ones are not happy. Maybe I'm weird, but I wouldn't describe getting chased by angry bees as idyllic. So I sent them to the nether, where they could calm down. I didn't expect that to actually do anything, but turns out they no longer hated me. So I returned them to society, where they proceeded to fly into the void. And that bee is leaving, and so is that one. Okay, bye. Following that day of madness, it was time to focus on trading again, right after witnessing the most wholesome moment of this entire video. In addition to my plans to trade for bookshelves, I figured I might as well use the librarian for an enchanted book too. I didn't have anything specific in mind, just whatever seemed useful. I refreshed trades for about 2 minutes. These are all the books that I got. Until I came across Efficiency 4 for 16 emeralds, with a bookshelf trade as well. Hard to pass up, so I didn't. And once I leveled him up, he had an Unbreaking 3 trade too. It was expensive, but still nice to have. I was missing 2 obsidian for the enchanting table, so I ventured into the nether for 2 buckets of lava and converted them. My brain went on vacation for a bit trying to craft it. It's not like I've crafted these hundreds of times. I placed it next to the villager pen for now, but I needed more bookshelves for it to be useful. Since I had already spent my life savings on the 10 that I had, it was back to nano farming carrots. By the morning, my inventory was full, and I paired the carrots with rotten flesh to start printing emeralds. I started with 4 more bookshelves, but I ended up needing another 2 to get level 30 enchants. The one block had been kind enough to give me a decent amount of lapis, and the last thing I needed was a grindstone. The first enchant I took was power 4 on my bow, which turned into this masterpiece. That was going to be perfect for the dragon fight. This shovel would have been perfect too, but the fortune kind of ruined it. The pickaxe was just a plain efficiency 4, but I'd be able to combine it with an Unbreaking 2 pickaxe later. I took a stab at another shovel. Kind of lame, but I could use the efficiency 4 trade to make it better. I also made a diamond sword and used my last levels to see what I'd get. That's not bad. Now that I was out of levels to enchant with, I combined my pickaxes into a better one and went back to carrot farming. I don't even like carrots. Money is kind of nice though. I finally learned why so many villagers had been escaping. I did some iron trades too, rotten flesh trades, and by far this was the most amount of emeralds that I had ever had. I used them to buy a full set of diamond armor, a ton of golden carrots, and an efficiency 4 book. The diamond helmet was good enough as is, but I wanted to try my luck enchanting the rest of the set. Feather falling is one of the best enchantments in the game, and playing in hardcore mode makes it a must-have. I got protection 4 on the chestplate, which was good enough for me. And I always seem to end up combining a few different pairs of boots together to get my final pair. And this was no different. With my lack of levels stopping me from progressing, I decided to try converting the mob farm into an XP farm by hitting them through the floor with an armor stand. But I think it needed to be one block higher, and there was no easy way to do that safely. So that was an entire day wasted. I gave the villagers a reminder that they're always on call. I needed my midnight XP from somewhere, and it clearly wasn't going to be the mob farm. I used the XP to make this horrible pair of pants, and that pretty much just sums up the whole day. I wanted to have my gear finished 5 days ago. The perfectionism had taken over, but in my defense, some of it was just unlucky, like getting the same exact enchant twice in a row. But finally, I was gifted the perfect pair of pants. I traded so much rotten flesh to the clerics at this point that they were now selling bottles of enchanting, and since I no longer needed emeralds, that was just free XP. This enchant turned out pretty good, but you know what's better than 3? And just like that, 10 days of trading, enchanting, my gear was good enough. Next up on my to-do list, covering the entire island in dirt. Like I showed before, gravel can be turned into dirt with a few extra steps, and we just so happen to have an infinite nether full of gravel at our disposal. Testing out the effectiveness of my new feather falling boots, I made my way to the first gravel pit. Thanks to the new shovel, I could insta-mine this stuff, but I had no idea how much I was going to need. Once I depleted all of the gravel that wasn't holding back an ocean of lava, the next and much larger batch was right around the corner. And this one was actually enough to fill up my inventory. Back at home, it was time for the not-so-adventurous step of converting coarse dirt to real dirt. It took a modest 40 minutes, so 2 full days of placing and breaking dirt. Usually when you spend that long breaking blocks, you end up with a nice flat area, or a large mine that you can look at and say, yeah, I did that. I had a pile of dirt. I retired the cobble generator because it was ugly, and I had to make way for the dirt. I'd worry about making a prettier one later. Then I got the stuff to make fire res potions. So really these are kind of fine as 3 minutes. There's no way that I fall into lava and I can't get out within 3 minutes. So now I have 8 minutes. So that's like I fall asleep while I'm trying to escape lava or something. Continuing the cleanup, the old crop farm was next on the chopping block. It really just didn't have a use anymore. And since my fish drowned, neither did the pond. The nano farm was also kind of ugly, so I decided to just use up the bone meal that I had to get a stockpile of carrots. And then I removed it too. And that was enough destruction for now. The plan was to do the 2 wide bottom slab border around the edge of the dirt still. That way nothing would get close to the edge. Then it was just a matter of filling everything in. Unfortunately, I ran out of dirt before I ran out of places to put dirt. Well, for now I could at least fill in the border of slabs. Going back into the nether wasn't bad. There was a bit of exploration, I got to use my bow. Even the gravel collecting was fine. I depleted the last pile I was working on and found the mother lode. The inventory was replenished. I got to retest my boots on the way back, and my sword and shield. The only thing worse than converting dirt for 40 minutes is doing it again. So I guess this is a good time to mention that I have a Discord server. If you'd like to join and be part of that community, there's a link in the description. With the rest of the dirt filled in, I now had a blank canvas for anything I wanted to build. I took a few minutes to write down all my ideas in a book, and then used signs to map out where the first couple were going to go. Palmed. It wasn't much of a choice to build the cobble generator first. I needed it if I wanted to use stone in any of the other builds. I thought it'd be fitting to disguise it as a mine entrance. Those are a little harder to build on flat ground, but you'd be surprised where 20 minutes of experimenting can get you. Making a functional interior that actually looked nice was its own challenge. I ended up turning off fire spread before building this part because the only thing it does is limit the kind of blocks you can use. If my island was going to burn down naturally, it would have happened 75 days ago. This time I made the cobble gen double-sided, which would double the output, and I was also determined to make it lossless. I used chains to hold the lava back, and then hopper minecarts on the sides that feed a hopper line to the chest in the middle. I did a test run to make sure it worked, and after breaking 64 cobblestone, I didn't lose a single piece. So no more wasted time or pickaxe durability. To decorate the inside, I smelted some stone. mined another 2 stacks while I waited, and replaced all the oak planks and dirt to make it look like an actual mine. A lantern for the final touch, and this turned out pretty good. Definitely an upgrade over the one I had before. And if you're ever unsure about a build, bone meal it. If you couldn't tell by how fast the days have been going by, I severely underestimated how much time it would take to plan and build all of this stuff. I still had 2.5 one-block phases to work through. This hole I was working on was for the pond. In its current form, the island was lacking a lot of detail, so I wanted this to be a bit more than a hole with water. Detail takes time, so the construction of this took almost an hour, bringing us to day 85. The bridge will look a lot better once it's connected to a path, but overall it's a nice addition to the island. Now for the tower. Having once been a pit, the tower really wasn't much of a tower at all. It was too stubby. To expand it, I was going to need more stone. What if I just made you watch every block? Once I had the stone, it was time to start renovating. I wasn't exactly sure how the pit was going to work, since it would no longer be on top of the tower. But let's handle this one problem at a time. The exterior of the tower was pretty self-explanatory. It's just taller. For the inside, I started with a fancy new floor, filled in the trench, which I guess is on the outside. Also doors, which separate the inside from the outside. So hopefully that makes things less confusing now. The only way I'd be able to hit things in the feet was if I shrunk the pit. So I shrunk the pit. The gray walls now felt too plain, so I added windows. One of the drawbacks with the smaller pit is that I wasn't sure what would happen if a ghast spawned again. But I wouldn't have to worry about that unless I do a 200 days video, so let me know if you'd like to see it. And that's really it for the tower pit. It's not perfect, but it wasn't perfect before either. We're now on day 88, and I had one more thing that I wanted to build before finishing the one block. When I placed Luis in that pen, I promised him a better home one day. And although I'm a man of few words, I'm also a man of my word. So no take-backsies. Squeezing all the villagers into this one house was technically possible, but less convenient and humane than the current setup, so why not a whole village? Complete with a farm, a well, a blacksmith, mason house, and stables. Now you might be wondering how I'm going to beat the game and finish the island in 5 days. I am too. It was pretty clear that I wasn't going to be able to do both, so for now I worked on the one block, and I accepted the fact that I'd probably have to go over that 100-day limit to accomplish everything I wanted to. The zombie horse was a bit of a surprise, considering it's a creative-only mob. The smaller pit made letting things out more complicated, but still possible. I got some angry bees next, a couple of which I was able to save. If they aren't tied down, they fly into the void, so this is their new home. Hello, other cats. I mean, you could move, okay. Aw, are you stuck in this hole? I feel so bad. Tragic. And at this point, you guys have already seen everything Phase 8 had to offer. Overall, it was a pretty peaceful phase, no real threats, and I was able to finish it up on day 96. And while it was upgrading, a new chest monster was born. This one was smaller, but ugly. I just didn't have the space to store all this stuff. Phase 9 was described as a desolate land. That really didn't give me any clues, and I wasn't afraid of nothingness, so I jumped right in. The silverfish weren't really much of a surprise considering all the stone bricks that were spawning, so I assumed this was just going to be a stronghold themed phase. That didn't last long. I've never tried to shoot a breeze before, so I wasn't aware that they Uno reverse the arrows back into your face. It took me 3 arrows to figure that out, and then the party was over. The breeze might have been a bit messy, but they weren't going to kill me or anything. Then came the skulk. There's no way it spawns a warden, like that's not a thing, right? I wouldn't do that. I'd spent the last 96 days worshipping the one block, and although we had our differences, I couldn't imagine that it would spawn a warden. After giving me dozens of mobs to collect, it surely wouldn't spawn something with the potential to kill all of them. Oh no, I don't like you. The charged creeper wasn't exactly reassuring, but the current setup of the pit handled it easily. The next mob was somehow even worse, and it was clear that this phase was meant to turn my island into a desolate land. I did have a totem now, which I kept in my hotbar. If you've watched my hardcore series, then you might be wondering where my custom totem texture is. I decided that it doesn't really make sense in 100 days since I usually don't even have a totem, and there's no fancy editing. This was the first phase that didn't give me a single passive mob. The one block was clearly not very happy that I had spent all that time building. Not happy at all. What? Are you serious? He's gonna kill everything. While I was running around in disbelief, the warden was targeting the mobs in the water hole, and I finally came up with a plan. I grabbed some dirt and some arrows and started pillaring up. The warden's ranged attack only reaches 20 blocks vertically, and since he couldn't escape, all I had to do was rain down arrows from above. Not a fun experience, but I survived, and so did everything else besides a turtle and maybe a frog. And now I'm expected to just continue on like this thing didn't just spawn a warden 2 blocks away from me. Funny thing, this one block. 2 evokers are a little harder than 1, especially when the Vexes light you on fire. So now I've got a golem ready for the next time. None of the other mobs were a match for the pit, although the breeze were making me question my sanity. It's crazy how much faster you can get through the phases with enchanted tools. In the final chest, I found a mace, which I've never even used before, and a budding amethyst block. The countdown was again used to deal with the giant pile of items. To no one's surprise, phase 10 was the end phase. With phase 9 throwing all of Minecraft's most dangerous mobs at me, it didn't seem possible for phase 10 to be even harder, and thankfully it wasn't. It was pretty much everything you'd expect from an end-themed phase. Endstone, Purper, Enderman, Snow White, and Endermites. Too many Endermites. Also shulker boxes, and I think the best way to show it is just a time-lapse. The entire time I was wondering how the end portal was going to work. Would it teleport me, spawn the portal somewhere, give me the portal gateways in block form? I was hoping for the blocks so I'd be able to choose my own spot, but that didn't exactly happen. Hey. That's not cool, man. That's my house. You can't just destroy. I can't use this anymore. With my new questionable entrance to the tower, the block upgraded to the final phase, the after phases. The after phase is just an infinite phase that spawns random blocks, mobs, and chests from the previous phases. But more important than that was the fact that it was day 99. I still had time to beat the dragon by day 100. With the dragon defeated, I grabbed its egg by impaling it with a torch, and went home. This is where the challenge is supposed to end, but this island is very much unfinished. I've got chests in the middle of what should be pathways, an animal pen poking through the ground, and an entire village in beached boats. It's quite frankly unacceptable, so time to put in some overtime. I removed the nether portal because it was right where I wanted the path to be. The goats were going to have to live inside the stables, otherwise they'd ram other animals off the island. The polar bear was also locked in there because it'll kill the foxes. Basically, the stables are a place I can lock up all the annoying mobs so I don't have to deal with them. It's not a prison, it's a home for misbehaving animals. Perhaps they do need a prison. Some more bone meal to mask the flatness of the flat land. A pathway from the bridge to the void. Maybe I'll put something there in the second episode, which may or may not end up existing. To get the Striders out of the way, I put them in the mine for now, and that gave me the space for a nice winding pathway from the tower to the iron farm, then another one to the mine. I did want to leave this area of the island as a forest, but I wanted to spread the trees out a bit more and mix in some birch. It was also somewhere I could hide the nether portal. In the nether, I made a little lava pond for the Striders to hang out. This was much better than locking them in the stables. Once I was satisfied with the look of the new forest, I started working on a house. Nothing like building your first house 34 hours into your playthrough. I tried to use a different set of blocks, since the rest of the island consisted of about 3 colors total. It's hard to find a balance between unique and too unique, but the mangrove wood gave the island some much needed color. Day 107, I started moving my items into the house. I hope this chest monster destruction is as satisfying to you as it was to me. With my house finished, I could now release all the animals from the pen, since they'd no longer be in my way while building. Not calling the villagers animals, but they too could be released. And who says villagers can't sleep in the stables? The house to villager ratio was a bit low, but I built the entire world as we know it by hand, so they can get over it. I also caught one judging my food choices. I released the foxes and the mushroom before disaster struck trying to let the water mobs out. The gap in the slabs was tall enough for the frogs and the turtles to fit through, and they started pushing each other out. In hindsight, I could have used water to stop them, but I didn't. If it makes you feel any better, I can always get more from the after phases. The surviving axolotls were moved to the pond. I filled in the old animal pen with dirt, connected the bridge to the pathway, and planted some trees to fill in the space behind the stables. That just leaves us with the destroyed tower. I didn't have much of a choice but to move the doors up to the height of the end portal, and with my new house being the same height as the tower, it really wasn't towering over as much as it should, so I made it taller again. Then it was just the final touches. A fancier border around the island. So fancy. And then some windows to break up the flat side of the roof of my house. Some fancy borders along the bridges. I just couldn't help it. And as I climbed to the top of my tower on day 113, stopping halfway to craft more ladders because I didn't have a way up to the top of my tower, I looked down on everything and everyone, and realized that my small islands were not fancy enough. But that was okay. In the 13 days of overtime, this island had— I have to do it. As I climbed to the top of my tower, still on day 113 but this time with ladders, I looked down at everything I had built. Oh. Over the last 38 hours, I'd transformed a single block into a massive island, full of life, questionable decisions, and a sprinkle of trauma. Here's what it looks like on the map. And if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching, listening, or sleeping. If you'd like to see me continue this world, let me know in the comments, and if there's enough support, I just might put myself through the suffering of trying to manage my inventory through the after phases. Goodbye.